Round Rock, can you hear me all right? Great. Hi, everybody. Oh, nobody up here. Pretty full house. I'm excited. Welcome. Thanks for coming. We're going to talk about losing weight today. So in this presentation, I'm probably not going to tell you anything you haven't heard before. I'm not going to be sharing any sort of magic bullet that's going to make everything like super easy and make weight loss like really quick. So unfortunately, that's just not how it works, and that is always going to be the truth. It just takes consistency and it takes time. But I am going to go over a lot of different like tips and tricks and things that can help you out on the journey. So this is not working. It was earlier. Let me get this out and back up. There we go. So I'm going to start off with some barriers to weight loss because obviously weight loss is not sheerly about willpower. There are other factors out there that do make it much harder for some people and conversely easier for others who don't have those barriers in place. We'll go over just the basics of reading nutrition labels if you're into that. Some SMART goals, what they are, how to set one up, because SMART goals can definitely help you stay consistent and have much more clear goal in place that you want to get to. SMART goals, we'll go over them and I'll go in more detail there. Food journaling and food logging, calorie counting for those who are more number oriented like myself, reading recommendations that I pulled from faculty over in the nutrition department, a couple of exercise insights, and then the importance of whole foods at the end. So there are quite a few barriers to weight loss. I kind of spent an entire series one semester going over all the different barriers in depth. The larger food environment is probably the biggest one that we face in our day-to-day lives. Unfortunately, we live in a country and a culture where our food environment is just pretty much garbage. It's very, very difficult to find anything healthy if you want to go out to eat anywhere. And then if you do find something healthy, it's very expensive. And so that is an enormous barrier that causes a whole bunch of injustices to a whole bunch of people like across the nation as it is. But yeah, unhealthy food, it's just ubiquitous and it's everywhere. And it's very, very difficult that if you want to lose weight, to have your environment is unsupportive. It does not support you in your journey. As far as the food environment goes, we also have our personal food environments, which is usually the biggest place that we can intervene for ourselves. If we know what we have in our house and we know that we're going to eat it, we will eat it. My biggest Achilles heel when it comes to just eating healthy is ice cream, because I just love ice cream. It's like my biggest thing. I love it. So I don't buy it. I don't keep it in my house because I know if it's there, I will eat it. And if my roommates buy it, half the time I eat theirs. I ask them first, but I do eat theirs. And so I just make it a point to never buy it. And that's kind of one of the biggest things you can do for yourself is if you know what you're trying to accomplish and you know what's going to hinder you, just keep it out of your immediate environment. While we can't do a whole lot about the larger food environment, we can do a lot about what it is around us individually. On a side note, there's some cool stuff that we're doing with WellCats on the research front here. We're looking at the food environment on campus for faculty and staff, specifically in catered food events. It's kind of part of what my thesis is doing. So we're looking into research on influencing that larger food environment to make it more supportive for health goals. So you'll see the second one here, bacteria, the microbiome. This is another one that, honestly, if you've never heard of it, there's no way you could possibly know. This does a lot. So there's trillions and trillions of bacteria like in and on our bodies. They outnumber human cells 10 to 1. And their biggest place of residence is the gut. And they're depending on what we eat will actually influence which type of bacteria grow. And research has actually shown that the type and how many of the bacteria that are present can actually communicate with your brain and influence food cravings. And so that's some really interesting research out there because they found if you eat a diet that's very high in fat, processed sugar, and salt, you tend to breed bacteria that also really enjoy high fat, processed sugar, and salt. And so those can influence your food cravings. And so it might not just be willpower that you're lacking, you actually have something biological working against you. But the nice thing about the bacteria in the microbiome is that they can be reprogrammed, if you will. You can starve off the bad ones and feed better ones, bacteria that prefer fibers and healthier foods like fruits and vegetables. And the way you do that is just to start eating those things. This is another thing that takes time. When you start switching your diet to more like whole foods, more whole grains, more fruits, more vegetables, you will start making a change in your microbiome, but that does take about a month or two to really get that composition to flip, if you will. So if you're starting a journey of weight loss and you're realizing that, geez, it's really hard to like avoid some of these things, or like I'm craving something that's like really high in sugar, just being aware that you do have something biological inside you that's contributing to those cravings will hopefully help you realize that it's not just the fact that you're lacking in willpower, and that there is something else going on. Social pressures down here, we all deal with this. We may have unsupportive families, unsupportive partners, unsupportive friends, or unsupportive coworkers. And then those who have that social support, obviously it's a little easier for them. I'm going to go over a little bit on how to like deal with that, and then cultural practices as well. I forgot I actually have slides on all of these things. Back on the food environment aspect, here are some recommendations for some better fast food options if you are going out to eat. Chipotle is one of my personal favorite places to go because it's easy to like make something healthy out of it. Personally, I always get brown rice, black beans, fajita veggies, pico, hot sauce, corn, and guacamole. That's what I get. If you ask them for double rice and double beans, they'll give it to you for free, by the way. So I kind of put a list here on like things to enjoy, things to kind of limit or go light on, and then things to avoid. You'll notice in a couple of the areas like Subway and Jimmy John's, I specifically put meats over here, and that was on purpose, because those places tend to use more processed meats. And there's been some pretty conclusive research showing that processed meats and red meats are highly carcinogenic, and they've actually been classified as like class 1 carcinogens along with smoke, like cigarette smoke. So avoidance of processed and red meats is recommended.
So lay off the alone?
Yeah, like exactly. I know. I'm thinking I probably should have put blaze meat over here as well, just because thinking back on it, they do tend to have a lot of more processed meats. But I know Chipotle has more like, and Chick-fil-A more definitely like not as processed meat. Yeah, so here's a column of things to enjoy. Obviously, always whole grains, veggies. You're not going to find a whole lot of fruits in these places. Yeah, go light on the cheese and the meat and the dressings, and just avoid all these things that are oily dressings or just really high in fat. Oftentimes you'll find like more saturated fatty things too, sour cream, butter, and all that stuff. It is possible in a few places to get some healthier options, so I hope this kind of helps at least give you like 1 or 2 or 3 options that you can be aware of when you go out. It just sucks that when you go out to eat, you kind of have to know a lot about food in order to pick something healthy, so I hope this table is useful. Actually, I already talked about all this microbiome. The more fiber, the more fruits and more veggies, the more whole grains you have, the more bacteria you'll breed that actually like those things, and it'll reduce cravings over time. Social pressures. Oh yes, I had a couple of tips on these. So there are a lot of online options on there. I know there's some programs that have their own online communities, but usually those programs you have to pay for. There are other venues like Facebook. There's lots of different pages for like support on Facebook. I'm not so sure about Instagram since that's mostly picture-based. But if seeking out an online community, if you don't have social support immediately around you, can be helpful because at least you'll have one venue of support that you can go to. And then, like, yeah, a lot of these exercise and health apps do have a social component online as well. If you go to the gym or you go in any place that you exercise, make friends. Those people are there for the same reason as you are. And if you don't have supportive friends somewhere else, make a couple in the gym. Maybe you'll find a workout partner that you can go work out with consistently as well. And then, if you like conflict, you can always approach those who are unsupportive, especially if they're like caustically unsupportive and like are being purposeful and like trying to sabotage you, and kind of address them and say, I am trying to make these changes. Why are you being this way? Like, why are you purposely trying to sabotage me? Like, is there something that, like, and I don't know, just have that conversation to see how they come across. Because usually people that become attacking when someone else is trying to lose weight is because they're watching them succeed in something that maybe they have tried multiple times before and failed on. And so watching someone else try, and especially if they see someone else succeed, it can make them feel worse about it. So oftentimes it's not coming from a place of like dislike, it's coming from a place of like insecurity. And so just engaging those conversations might actually be able to help them out too. The TTM model down here is a trans-theoretical model of change. That's a theoretical model that kind of puts people on a spectrum of where they are as far as readiness to change. At the beginning, you have pre-contemplation. which are those who they've thought about like making some sort of health behavior change, but they have no intention of changing it within the foreseeable future. The next step up is contemplation, where they're like actively thinking about it, and will probably make a change soon. The next stage is action, and that's kind of where I wanted to focus this in on. If you're in the action stage, you're making changes. Maybe you got a gym membership. Maybe you went through your pantry and got rid of a lot of bad stuff. Maybe you went to the grocery store and like bought ingredients and are gonna like meal prep and be purposeful about being ready for your week. That would be considered being in the action stage. And as far as this model is concerned, I think finding other people that you know are also in the action stage is very useful. And this would kind of go back to finding friends. Like finding people in that same stage of action as you will help you. And knowing this model, if you talk to people and you talk to them about weight loss, and they're like, yeah, that sounds cool. Like I would like to start doing that. But you haven't really seen anything that they've actively done, whether getting a membership, doing any sort of change to make that a reality, you would know that they fall under the action stage on the model. You can just kind of identify who is where. And if you can identify people in the action stage, those are the people you kind of want to say, hey, come closer, be my friend. Like, let's hang out and be buddies, because that'll build up your social influences and your social positivity around you, and will just make it easier going forward. Any questions on that? Yes. So yeah, pre-contemplation is the first stage. That's someone who has thought about making a change, but really has no intention of doing anything about it for the next like half year foreseeable future. Contemplation is someone who is thinking about a health change and will probably make a change soon. Maybe they bought a membership, but they just haven't gone. They just haven't. They've done one little thing. Action stage is someone making purposeful, decided actions, meal prepping, working out consistently, going through the pantry, cleaning out, things like that. The next stage is, it's not maintenance, that's the last one. Yeah, oh, I forgot what the fourth one is. The last one is maintenance though, and that's just maintaining the health behavior change. And action is the one that we want to get everyone to. And then maintenance obviously is the ideal place to be, because you've already kind of incorporated it into your life and made everything a lifestyle. Any other questions before we continue? Yay. So cultural practices. This is the hard one to get around, depending on like what culture you grew up in and like what is traditional in your culture. There's a lot of cultural dishes that, while they're amazing and like very important on a cultural level, they're just nutritionally not healthy, which sucks. These are just a couple of ideas for maybe something you can do. I know this is not something that would be easy to do or even desirable to do at times. Exploring healthier takes on some cultural dishes, whether a vegetarian or maybe a vegan option, or just anything that would incorporate more of a whole food version of one of the ingredients would be a way you can make cultural dishes healthier. So on the second point, in our culture, like birthdays are a big thing, and birthdays always have like generally unhealthy food. Now, if it's your birthday personally, in my personal opinion, like special occasions like that are a time to like splurge, enjoy, celebrate, and enjoy yourself. If you're going to someone else's birthday and it's not yours, and you don't want to like eat a ton of cake and ice cream and whoever knows what else is there, take something yourself. Like prepare a dish and say like, hey, I made this for you. At least there'll be one thing there that you can freely eat that you know will be supportive of your goals. And if applicable, restrict any traditional and healthy dishes to special occasions only. I'm a big advocate of like, yes, let's enjoy the modern foods and stuff that we have because they're delicious and amazing, but let's enjoy them like responsibly and like on special occasions. It's the chronic nature of constantly eating unhealthy that's problematic. Once in a while, if you enjoy, in my case, like a bowl of ice cream and a craft beer, if I do that on special occasions, it's not going to be a detriment to my health goals. Nutrition labels, yes. Okay, so here's a quick list of just like the main things you want to focus on. Like greatest hits, if you will. The first thing you always want to look at is the ingredient list. That's super important. If it's really, really long, just put it down. It's an easy way to think about it. What you're looking for is you're looking for a lot of whole food ingredients. And for those who have never been to one of my presentations, I talk about this all the time. Whole foods are anything that if you go to the grocery store and you pick it up in the produce section and you gave it an ingredient list, it would be one thing, like cabbage, apple, rice, something like that. That's what you're looking for on the ingredient list. Second thing you want to look for is the amount of added sugar. The laws changed as far as nutrition labeling, and so added sugars are required to be listed, but not, it doesn't have to be like completely 100% until I think like 2020. So you'll see a lot of nutrition labels that do have it, but you'll still see some that don't. And what it is under the sugar label, you'll see another line that says added sugars. And that's really important because there are natural sources of sugar. And so that's going to show up on the sugar line. But then how much are the companies adding to that product? And that's what's most important. So that's the second thing you want to look for is the amount of added sugar. Obviously, the lower the better. The amount of fiber, the next thing, the higher the better for fiber. Dietary fiber is always important. You always want that in anything you eat. The amount of saturated and trans fat. Trans fat should absolutely always be 0. There was a big old thing. It was back probably about a decade ago or so where like trans fat was like the big thing, and in all the headlines and tons of research showing that it's awful, like just terrible for the body. And so everywhere took out trans fats, but there's still a couple of things that use it. So just be on the lookout. If you see anything with trans fat, just please avoid. Saturated fat should be as low as possible as well. And then the serving size. Serving size will get you if you're not paying attention. The laws did change as far as serving sizes as well. Like a 20-ounce bottle of Coke, instead of being 2 servings now, it's 1. Because who doesn't drink the entire bottle when they get it? And the same thing with ice cream. I think like with pints, of course I know this. With the pints, instead of being 4 servings, they're now I think 2. Although I still eat the whole thing at once. But okay, so here's some examples. Little Debbie Swiss rolls, very highly processed food. I mean, they're good, but as an example, I have to contrast things. So first thing you want to look at what we're saying, ingredient list. Yes, the ingredient list up here. You'll notice the very first ingredient is sugar. Ingredient lists are in order of what ingredient is used the most, so which one is used the least. So if sugar is your #1 ingredient, no. Corn syrup. This is also sugar. It's just in liquid form. So we have like solid sugar and then liquid sugar and then water and then enriched bleached flour. So yeah, and then enriched bleached flour, I can't talk today, are like the processed white flour like causes high insulin spikes and all that stuff. This is a terrible way to start your ingredient list. You don't want to eat anything like this, because this is just a whole bunch of processed carbs. And so you'll see that reflected here in sugars, 26 grams. This does not show added sugars, but if it did, it would be 26 grams.
Additional 26?
No, just 26. So whatever they show under it is not additional. It would essentially be like a component of. So fiber, under 1 gram, so it's basically no fiber.
What is a good number for fiber?
Fiber honestly kind of depends on what you're looking at. If you're looking at something like a whole wheat pasta, the fiber is going to be about 6 grams per serving, 6 or 7. It's never going to be super high, like 10 or 20 or anything. But probably about, I'd say like 3 to 6 is a good range.
Do you know how much carbs you should have in a day?
In a day, the recommendation for like the AMDRs is 45 to 65% of total calories. I know that does require math to figure out. I apologize. But carbohydrates arguably are, all macronutrients are super important. Carbs are vital just to for energy production in the body. I would not recommend avoiding or trying to restrict carbohydrates, but I would recommend that all your carbohydrates be from like complex carbohydrate sources. And pretty much if you're eating whole foods, that's what you're going to be getting. So if like you're looking at whole grains, barley, brown rice, oats, quinoa, things of that nature are really good sources of complex carbohydrates. And like I have the MyPlate thing at the very end of this, and it does, so it has fruits and veggies for half your plate, protein, and carbs. So I guess every meal, if you had about 25 to like 40% of your plate or 50% is like a complex carbohydrate that has like other things mixed in with it, that would be a good way to kind of gauge it. Does that help?
Yes.
Answer your question? Cool. So on these, saturated fat, 6 is quite high. Serving size is 2 cakes, so it's like one of the little containers. No trans fat, that's nice. Yeah, but this doesn't look very good. So Triscuits, here's something else. You notice the ingredient list here. Whole grain wheat, that's better than like the enriched bleached flour. So it's probably gonna have a little more fiber just based on looking at this. And then vegetable oil. So that is like liquid fat. There's nothing else to it. It's just kind of straight fat. And then salt. So looking over here, sugars, no sugar because like wheat doesn't have any sugar and neither does vegetable oil. Fiber, you see a decent amount of fiber, 3 grams, and that's because this is a whole grain wheat as opposed to the other one. Saturated fat, it's respectably low on this, no trans fat, that's good. Serving size, though, is 6 crackers. So it's really not a whole lot.
Not the whole box.
Not the whole box, I know, right? Personally, I think this would work as like a tiny snack, like if you're looking to just tie yourself over to the next meal. It's not particularly nutritionally dense. It's pretty much just complex carbs and like fat. But this would work as like a kind of decent little snack. I would just make note of the serving size and how many calories come with it too if you're trying to track your calorie intake, because 6 crackers can go really fast. Here's another example of one of the breads that I personally like to get a lot at HEB, the whole wheat multigrain. You'll notice the ingredient list starts with whole wheat flour. That's a good place to start, especially if you're talking about bread. It's much better than processed white flour. Then water. Water is always nice. And a multigrain blend, and you'll see in parentheses, they open up here and they explain the ingredients of the multigrain blend. So steel cut wheat, barley flakes, oats, I can never say this word. It's a type of grain. Amaranth, rye flakes, flax seeds, sunflower seeds. So even within this multigrain blend, you're seeing a lot of whole food components. And this bread, if you actually take it out of the bag and look at it, you can see like specks and flecks and like solid things in the bread. So this is a good way to start your list. And then like yeast, wheat, gluten, this is just stuff to hold it together. So if you're gluten sensitive, avoid. Honey, you notice sugar is on the list, but it's much, much lower. So that means it's nothing like, you know, the little Debbie's before where it's just like number 1 on the list. If you see sugar on something that's like really, really low, that's going to be much, much better. Like you don't have to worry so much about that if you see it lower on the list. You'll notice over here that serving size is 1 slice, sugars is 4 grams. So if you're particularly looking to avoid like a lot of sugar, then that should be noted. But fiber, 4 grams, very good. No trans fat, no saturated fat either. And then calories 120. So as far as bread, since you're going to put something in it or on it, this is better than other breads because other breads, especially like Wonder Bread by comparison, is going to be like even higher in carbohydrates, but going to have no fiber. Is also still going to have sugar, maybe would have even more sugar too. Breads are kind of tricky. I get a lot of questions about breads. Personally, I think this is a good recommendation for a bread. Yes, ma'am.
I have another question. Sodium. How much sodium should you?
Sodium. If you have like hypertension or you're in like danger of developing hypertension if you're pre-hypertensive, the recommendation is to keep your sodium intake under 1,500 milligrams per day. If you have hypertension or you have pre-hypertension. For those who aren't, the recommendation is under 2,000 milligrams per day. And yeah, so this has 210, that's per slice, so that'll be 420. If you're focusing on like more of a whole foods diet, you're not gonna have a whole lot of foods in your diet that are high in salt. You'll mostly be adding the salts like either during the cooking process or afterwards. So it's a lot easier to kind of meet those recommendations. But if you're someone that is healthy, even if you're not under 2,000 milligrams every single day, if you're following more of a whole foods based diet, like that kind of like offsets to an extent. That was a poor way of putting that. I would recommend trying to stick to the 2,000 milligram recommendation. But if you don't always hit it, if you're still focusing on eating healthy foods, I wouldn't worry so much about it. It's not something you need to like obsess over. But yeah, if you do have hypertension or something like that, obsess over it a little more. Larabars. You notice the umlaut over the A, so it's actually pronounced like an E, Larabars, Germans. So what is the ingredient list? Here's the ingredient list. Just two things. There's cashews and dates. Cashews are a type of nut. All nuts and seeds are higher fat sources of plant-based foods. And dates are a type of fruit. So that's all that's in these. It's called cashew cookie. You'll see here, sugars are 15 grams. It's from the dates, but you'll notice it's 0 grams of added sugar. And so that's how that will appear. This does have fiber, 2 grams. That comes from both of these sources. No trans fat. You do notice there is some saturated fat here, but that's coming from your cashews. So it is coming from a natural food source. Serving size is 1 bar, 220. These things are really good, actually. They just like also taste really good. Snacks and things like these, that if you look at the ingredient list and you see whole food, or like whole food, those are the kind of things you want to go for. Because those are going to be just a lot better for you all the way around, because you know they're not filled with like other things that are super processed. They're from like whole food ingredients. I wish more things like this existed. These are at HEB, yes. And here's another one, blueberry muffin, 6 ingredients, which are dates, unsweetened blueberries, which is really nice of them to use unsweetened instead of sweetened blueberries, which would have added sugar, blueberry juice concentrate, lemon juice concentrate, and vanilla extract. You'll see here, it lists the sugars, but doesn't list the added sugars, but these sugars, again, are from the dates, because there's dates and the blueberry juice concentrate, so it might list a couple of grams of added sugar because of that. You notice fiber, 3 grams, a little higher than that. Low on the saturated fat and no trans fat, which is good too. No, actually, they're in the big HEB here. They're in aisle 1, like where all the bins of food are that you can get.
I will tell you, the first time I tasted one, I thought it was awful. But the more I got off of processed sugar, this tastes better.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So, because it's not, the other stuff's processed.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
For effect on weight loss, does the source of sugar matter?
Not really. No. Like weight loss always comes down to calories in, calories out. So regardless of the source, like that's not going to matter. So SMART goals. These are great. So SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So when it comes to specific, once you complete this step, your goal should be able to very concretely answer these questions. Like, who is doing it, or who are you doing it with? That I think I have over here. What's being done, or what exactly are you doing? When are you doing it? How are you doing it? How often are you doing it? Like, how much or how many of something are you tracking or taking away or adding? With whom are you doing this, if you are? And then why? So let me give you an example. Very often, you will hear people say, I want to eat less. That's extremely vague. That's not going to help you achieve anything. If you just say, I want to eat less, okay, well, what do you want to eat less of? I mean, by when? It's very hard to answer any questions with that. I know this is very long, but let's look at the components. So in order to have more energy, to sleep better, and to function better from day to day, that would be your why. I will improve my eating habits. It's what you're going to do. You're going to improve your eating habits. So using a food tracker or a food diary, like, how are you going to do it? I'm going to use a food tracker or a food diary. I'm going to determine what I eat and how often I eat for 1 week. So basically just track your diet for a week. Then once a week for 8 weeks, I'll replace one of the bad foods with a more whole food-based option with a healthier food. So yeah, this is very hyper-specific, but it does answer all of these questions. And looking at this, if you wanted to do it, you very easily could, like, because there's all the components and all the steps of what you had to do. Maybe this isn't your style by any means, but you could definitely develop something similar that would have this kind of level of specificity. So let's keep going. Measurable. This should answer the questions of how are you going to measure your progress? And then if you know how you're going to measure your progress, also, how will you know when you've reached your goal? Because if you don't really have a time goal of knowing like when you want to accomplish it by, then it's a lot easier to be like, I'll just like, stop. It's fine. So another example is like, I want to lose weight. That's a nice goal. But again, it's not specific. It doesn't tell me how, like when, like what are you gonna do, when are you gonna do it by. So here's a SMART goal. I will lose 10 pounds, a specific number, in 3 months, a specific time period. By what? By doing cardio on the treadmill or the elliptical 3 times a week for at least 30 minutes each session. So that's how. Also, I will eat a whole foods-based lunch each day that I work out. And I will track my weight loss by weighing myself on the first day of each month, first thing in the morning after using the bathroom. The best time to weigh yourself because you've been asleep, you didn't eat a meal just before. Like, you don't ever want to weigh yourself after you eat a meal because you will weigh 5 or 7 more pounds depending on how much you ate. It's always best to weigh yourself first thing in the morning, use the bathroom, get everything out, and then weigh yourself. So this would be measurable. Like, how will I measure my progress? I'm going to track my weight loss by weighing myself first day of each month. So using a scale, basically. How will I know when I've reached my goal? You will lose 10 pounds. And like, since you're tracking your weight, you will weigh yourself. You will see, oh, I weigh less. I weigh 10 pounds less now. Reach my goal. That's awesome. Yay. Attainable. This should answer the question that given your current resources, can you actually feasibly achieve this goal? Can you do it? So this is the same goal we just looked at. But here's some questions like, do I have access to a treadmill or an elliptical? Either in your home, at work, or at your gym. Do you have a gym membership? There's one. Can you afford a gym membership so you can have access to it? Or can you afford to buy a home scale? Do you have a scale at home? Do you actually have the time to prepare lunch 3 times a week? Like, do you have the time to go to the grocery store? Do you know what you're looking for? Do you know what you're going to prepare? Do you have the recipes and resources so you know what you're going to buy? Do you know how to cook? And does your schedule actually allow for that kind of time commitment? These are important questions that you want to ask yourself because the more something is possible, the more likely you are to do it. And so like, if the answer to any of these questions is no, then you want to figure out, one, am I willing to change it to make that a possibility? Or should I look at a different option, like something different within this goal? Or like, should I just change that part of my goal completely to find something that's easier to do? Relevant, this should answer the questions of like, is this something I actually want to do? And will it matter in like, 2, 3, 5 years? Like, and what are you going to achieve as a result of meeting the goal? Like, if it's a weight loss goal, you'll weigh less, but is there more to it than that? Is there more that you want to accomplish? So again, same goal as one of the same goals as before, using the tracker diary. The good questions for this are like, will I care if I met this goal or not after 3 months? If you kind of changed your diet a bit, you took out 8 unhealthy foods, added 8 healthy foods. Like in 3 months, you're gonna be like, well, like this really isn't that great. I would have rather done something else. I would have rather done more. I would have rather done less. Will achieving it matter in 5 years? And what benefits will you get? Time bound. I feel like this is the most important aspect of this, time bound. By when will this goal be achieved? It's always good to have a time goal. Because if you don't, again, it makes it a lot easier to say, well, there is no constriction on this. I can kind of like go willy-nilly. It makes it a lot easier to just hop off. So lose 10 pounds in 3 months, this example again. This is time bound, 3 months. So for your goal, you could say you could put a date, a specific date. So like if it was, maybe like, I don't know, a wedding date or some kind of thing. And I know for people that are going to get married, that's a big popular one. Or like any particular date, you can just insert it here. So I'd like you to take a few minutes, like 3 or 5 minutes, and just kind of think about, you don't have to like create an entire goal right now, because I know that like takes time and you might need to like be with yourself for a bit to figure it out. But here's all these questions. Let's take a couple minutes to kind of like look at what might be most relevant and most important to you and kind of write down what you would do about it and kind of jot down some ideas. So you can have some tools to work with when you go home to like create a SMART goal. I would love for us all to be able to make one now, but that would take like 20, 25 minutes. And unfortunately, we don't have that time. So under specific, here are all your questions: measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. And if you have questions, feel free to ask. And just to offer a different line of thinking, in case numbers might be swimming around in your head, keep in mind that a goal can be something like, I have a favorite pair of pants that I can't wear right now, and I would love to be able to wear them again. That would also be an excellent goal. Might be harder to set a time bound on that, but that would work in place of like a number goal, for example. Give about 1 more minute before we continue on. About 1 more minute. All right, well, I hope you're able to write down a good couple of things to get you going for later. Yeah, this will be fun. Just keep in mind that goals can be flexible. Make them work for you. It's any goal for any sort of improvements. I know I always have the habit of setting really unrealistic goals at first, and then I'm like, okay, wait, I can't do that. So then I have to kind of like dial it back. It's always okay to change things along the way. As long as it's something that you can stick with, that's what matters. Food journaling and food logging. Here's a different thing that some people do use. Useful apps for this include MyFitnessPal, Fitbit. If you have an Android, it'd be Samsung Health. If you have an iPhone, Apple Health would be where you can like track your food, track your steps, track your sleep, and all that good stuff. I put others here because I'm sure there's others you might know of that I don't. So yeah, this is a good way to just kind of track your food in case you don't want to like write it down all the time. You can just stick it in your app and have it with you wherever you go. It's a useful way to do that. I tend to do this kind of off and on. Usually when I get like really busy and get a little more stressed and like I can't like keep as tight of a hold on like what I'm making at home. Sometimes I'll just track what I'm eating to make sure nothing's getting like super out of control. So here's some official serving sizes, because I know as far as food logging and journaling, sometimes they want you to put serving sizes. These are like the official serving sizes, and I've just put these here mostly for reference, because these are like honestly really hard to visualize. It's like, you know, an ounce of this, an ounce of that, half a cup of this, quarter cup of that. It's really hard to see. So I added some more other helpful ones that you can kind of use. Just, you don't need measuring cups to do these things. A cup of raw leafy vegetables or like a baked potato. 1 cup would be about the size of a small fist. I don't know if my fist is small or not, but about the size of a fist would be about a cup. 3 ounces of cooked meat or chicken would be about the size of a deck of cards. A serving size of meat, I want to stress this, is a lot smaller than you think it is. 3 ounces, if you just think about the top of a deck of cards, very small. Like, it's not a whole lot. And a serving size of meat has about 20 to 25 grams of protein. So like if you're going out to eat and you're getting this giant thing of chicken, that's probably easily 4 servings. So yeah, one serving is only 3 ounces. A teaspoon of like margarine or butter would be about the size of a single die. Like a pair of dice, we'll just 1 single die, very tiny. And an ounce and a half of fat-free or low-fat cheese is about the size of 4 stacked dice. So you put the dice on top of each other. These are not very large volumes for these amounts.
But the portions is not the store. Like the cubed Colby Jack cheese.
Yeah.
Kind of, but it's cubed. So
yeah, the cubed ones I think are about, would essentially be, what was it? That ounce and a half. They're about this size. Kind of like a large die, if you will, but yeah. And that's, this is just to give you kind of a comparison for the serving sizes. For the official serving sizes, not necessarily the recommended like intake for that. Does that make sense? Okay. Other ones, like just using your hand. Like I said, balled fist would be about 1 cup of things. A handful would be about 1 to 2 ounces for any kind of snack food like nuts. The palm of your hand, again, the palm of your hand is about the size of a deck of cards. So that's another good way to measure like your meat servings. And the tip of your thumb, like from that first line up, would be about one teaspoon of something. And just so you know, 3 teaspoons equals 1 tablespoon. So if you're looking for like a tablespoon of something. These could help. I personally am not a huge fan of like these kind of serving size recommendations because they're hard to visualize and really use every day. So hopefully these are kind of helpful. You don't need, it's like you don't have to measure your food or weigh your food out. Some other ones, fruits and veggies. 1 serving would be about the size of a tennis ball or a baseball. So even like one of those small apples about the size of a tennis ball would count as a serving. Pasta, 1 serving dry, about the size of your fist. I guess that'd be kind of hard to do since it's in a bag and it's like loose, but maybe you could eyeball it. Fish, 1 serving size of fish would be about the size of a checkbook, so about yay big. And then there's meat again. And for burger patties, if you're looking at burger patties, about the size of a hockey puck would be considered a serving size. So if you want to...
With the hockey puck thing, though, you think about that, a hockey puck is probably about that big, but it's about that thick.
Yeah.
So if you just were to smash that out, it's going to be the same, but
Mhm. Yeah. The-
You know, it's a visual concept.
Yeah. If you want to do the pen and paper tracking route, these are just some options for what you could include on a food diary, like the date, the time, like when you ate it, what you ate, where you ate it, how much you ate, what you were doing when you ate it. It's usually a really good thing to help people kind of realize when they're eating when they're bored, or when they're not doing anything, they're just at home and just eating, and particularly like your mood too. You know, are you stressed out when you're eating? You know, are you anxious? That could be something good to kind of see like what you're eating when you feel a certain way. So here's kind of just an example. Put meal type, breakfast, what day it was, what time, what was eaten, and breaking it apart as much as possible is useful. Amount, for amount, yeah, like just if you have something like eggs, just put like how many, and stuff like that. Where, at home, activity while reading the newspaper. Who was I with? No one. I was alone. How did I feel? Neutral. Maybe tired. I don't know, depending on what time it is in the morning. Same thing like that across the way. And this would just help you kind of see, when was I like feeling good and what was I eating? Wow. Now what? Things like that. Yeah. So you can do this in a spiral. You can, again, use apps if you want. There's stuff on the computer. You can use an Excel spreadsheet. Whatever would be just easiest for you to do. So calorie counting. I know a lot of people like to count calories. I personally don't unless I have like a really specific goal in mind. But there's 3 components to energy expenditure when it comes to just like calories and energy. You have your resting metabolic rate, which is just how much energy you burn if you're just like lay down and not do anything like all day long. It's the amount of energy you need to keep your body functioning, like to breathe, to circulate your blood, like to think about things, all that stuff, just maintenance. The thermic effect of food, you actually do burn calories through the process of digestion, so that's what this is. It's only about 10%, so it's really kind of negligible. Physical activity is like one of the biggest contributors to total energy needs, and it's what's within our control the most as well. There's not much. You can do a couple of things to alter your RMR, like exercise and train, which will increase it a little bit. The physical activity, by and far, is what we have the most control over. And also, for those interested, a pound of fat is equal to 3,500 calories, in case you wanted to know that. So to calculate your BMR, your basal metabolic rate, resting metabolic rate, here's equations for females. You would use this equation. Your weight must be expressed in kilograms. So the math on that would be take your current weight in pounds and divide it by 2.2. That'll give you kilograms. Height must be in centimeters. Take your height in inches and multiply it by 2.54. And then you can plug those numbers into here. And that'll give you a number. And then depending on your activity level, you would multiply that number by this activity factor. So if you're sedentary or don't really exercise much, multiply by 1.2, and then et cetera all the way down. That'll give you an approximation of how many calories you need over the course of a day to break even, essentially, like for your basal metabolic rate, your thermic effect of food, and how active you are. The amount of calories it calculates is like, this is how much you need to meet that requirement. So the couple of things I want to add for this, apps and formulas, they're all just estimations. They're all giant estimations. There are different formulas you could use. This is the one that's most frequently used and used a lot in like clinical situations as well. But yeah, they're just estimations. When you're losing weight, if you want to use this style of calorie counting and tracking, take that number and subtract 500 calories from it. Because again, weight loss is a matter of like caloric deficit over a period of time. And that the calories can come from either like eating less or exercising more, or a combination of the two. If you want to continue eating, you can just exercise and like eat the same amount. There's different ways you can do it. But again, since these are estimations, I would say like after you take away the first 500, if you're not really seeing much of a difference over a couple of weeks, take another 100 or 200 off, because sometimes like the formulas usually overestimate. They can overestimate or underestimate. It kind of just depends. So you want to just take it slow until you find a place where you're like losing weight consistently. Did I see a question over here? No? Okay. Yeah, and then healthy weight loss, it should occur about at the rate of about 1 to 2 pounds per week. And I put this down here because that might not seem like a lot, even if you're just losing a pound a week. But if you think about that, 1 pound a week is 4 pounds a month times 12 over the course of a year. You can lose 48 pounds, upwards to 72 pounds in a year. And that's just losing at that rate. And this is healthy weight loss. This rate of weight loss is associated with maintenance over time. You don't ever want to be losing like 5 or 10 pounds a week. That's a lot really fast. Sometimes when people start exercising and start changing their diet, they will see quicker weight loss at the beginning, but then over time it will kind of taper off to about this rate. So if you do like jump onto something and like start making behavior changes and you see like really good weight loss and you do lose 5 pounds in like a week, don't freak out about it, but just realize that over time it will steady out and it will lower. Here's some reading recommendations that there was a question at my last presentation for just book recommendations for like kind of how to get started on like healthier changes, specifically in regards to like cooking and dieting. And so I didn't have a really good one off the top of my head, so I asked the faculty and the staff for their recommendations, and they gave me some good ones. The Art of Simple Food by Alice Waters. One of the professors recommended this because it focuses just on simple strategies, techniques, and recipes. This one's so easy is written by an RD, a registered dietitian. I think Dr. Jenny recommended this one because it focuses on like evidence-based information on foods. There were a couple like The Joy of Cooking, that it's not focused on healthy eating, but it is a really good resource for learning cooking techniques. So if you wanted to learn different techniques for cooking, that would be a good resource. Vegetarian Cooking for Everyone was recommended because it has easy recipes and instructions, but it is vegetarian, so keep in mind it won't have any meat. And then Dinner by Melissa Clark, I think this is another one that had good cooking instructions, but not so much a focus on like healthier foods. So depending on what you're looking to learn, you'll find some good resources within these books. Some exercise insights. Exercise can just do a whole lot of cool things for your body that nutrition can't. It can provide a physical stimulus, like for various tissues, specifically the muscle tissues. You can increase strength through exercise. You can't magically increase your strength through nutrition, unfortunately. You can increase your cardiovascular capacity. You can increase your lean muscle mass. You can change your body composition through exercise. You can gain more lean muscle mass and like lose body fat. You can induce certain metabolic changes that nutrition can't. There's just a lot of things about physical weight-bearing exercise or aerobic exercise that will cause different metabolic changes that nutrition won't be able to do. And it can also synergistically enhance a lot of positive effects of good nutrition, including all of these. I won't read them because there's a lot, but lots of really good things. I would just say, like, think of food when it comes to exercise. Food is fuel. Food is not something that you want to, like, you don't want to avoid eating when you exercise because that would be very detrimental to your exercise goals. Think of food as fuel. You need food so you can exercise. When it comes to, I should have put an asterisk on this. When it comes to fat loss, if your goal is fat loss, higher intensity is better. If you have any sort of musculoskeletal injury, please be aware of your intensity and don't do anything too heavy that would harm you. But as far as the math goes, even though you technically burn less fat at higher intensities, you burn more calories, and the percentage of calories of fat burned at a higher intensity is still more calories from fat than at a low intensity. That's higher intensity is better. Forget the supplements. I mean, for people like us, we're not elite athletes. Like, none of us in this room, including me, are athletes. I don't know. Maybe you guys are athletes, you do more exercise stuff. I don't know. As far as supplements go, we don't need them. Like, they're not going to do us any good. There are a couple of supplements that have a really solid research backing, like branched chain amino acids and creatine, that are shown to like be helpful and actually effective. But for us, we don't need them. They're not going to do us any good because that's for people at like elite levels of training. Don't neglect strength training. This is something that women oftentimes like will avoid. They'll think, oh, let me just do like aerobic exercise, treadmill, elliptical, because they're afraid of like getting bulky. Bulkiness, that doesn't happen. It's like actually a gender like sex hormone difference. The reason women like won't get bulky is because they have more estrogen, and men like can build more muscle and get more bulky because there's more testosterone. And so strength training, very important. Everyone should do strength training. It should not be something that you like scratch off your list. You should try to incorporate it where you can. And just find something you like, because if you find something you like, then you'll meet this last bit, which is consistency. Find something you enjoy. When it comes to strength training, there's a lot of different ways you can do strength training. There's a lot of different exercises, different programs, different types of things, different equipment you can use. So if you look up something, it's like, try doing this, and you either can't do it or you don't want to do it, find something else. It's like there will likely be something for everyone. And just the importance of whole foods here. This is always my big spiel. Whole foods are very important for weight loss because they have naturally fewer calories, and they have a lot more nutrition. Just like on a per calorie basis, you get a lot more nutrition bang for your buck. And compared to processed foods, they're just lower in calories. And so you can switch from a standard like Western American diet, switch to a whole foods diet, and you'll immediately be in a caloric deficit just because the volume of food that you consume to be full on a whole foods diet calorically is less than how much food you would have to eat on a Western diet. And volume is a big part because of caloric density. You put more calories in a small space, then you can like eat a larger volume of food, but you're gonna have a lot more calories that go with it. Versus whole foods, which you can eat a large volume, but because there's less calories per like square inch, if you will, you're consuming fewer calories. Yeah, so you're able to eat as usual, but consume fewer calories. They're high in fiber and high in water content, which makes for easier digestion, and the higher fiber also increases your satiety. That makes you feel fuller. And then there's a lot of options and cuisines on whole foods. So there's a lot of like flavor profiles you could experience, a lot of different like meal options. If you think of any cuisine across the world, you can think of like, you can find the spices that go within the types of foods that go in it as well. And yeah, just to finish, My Plate is a good resource to use. Canada came out with their own, which has caused quite a big stir, which is kind of exciting. They replaced the dairy with the water, and they kind of changed a couple of things here. I love the recommendation about replacing the dairy with the water. Their argument was that there's no scientific evidence really to support the health benefits of dairy, that dairy even has like market health benefits, making it a necessity. So they just swapped that out with water, and I thought that was actually really cool. Dairy, like if there is some argument to keep dairy in your diet, I think it should be elsewhere in the diet, not necessarily like having a glass of milk with everything you drink. I always think beverages should be kept to like water, unsweet tea, coffee, and things without sugar. Yeah, and so this is a good guidance for like structuring your plate. Of course, you can always like have the fruits like as a dessert as well, and like add some more grains or some more veggies. So dietary guidelines in My Plate are a good way to like help guide your meals if you want to use that as a resource too. Yeah, that's all I have. Do you guys have any questions? I kind of went a little longer than I expected it to be. Yes?
Recommended amount of water to take.
I think technically it's supposed to be 1 milliliter per like calorie you consume. I would aim for your standard like 8 glasses a day, 64 ounces, at least in general. Drink when you're thirsty. Don't try to like overhydrate because overhydration is a thing. Yeah, I would stick to that as a general recommendation. Yes, ma'am.
I know like a lot more different kinds of water have come out.
Yes.
Like vitamin water, sparkling water is, I mean,
my recommendation on things like vitamin water, whatever water, look at your nutrition label. Everything should say 0 because if it's water, everything should say 0. Vitamin water, I've looked at some of them and they have sugar. And the serving size is like 2 servings per bottle, and the sugar amount's like 11 or 15 grams. So you're getting like 20 to 25, 30 grams of sugar in a bottle of water. Yeah, so just look at the nutrition labels on those. tap water, filtered tap water is fine. You know. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you for coming. I really hope this was useful to you. And that, thank you. Thanks, Round Rock. Bye.